Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you, and we welcome you to the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, as Fox Sports Pay-Per-View and ESPN Plus Pay-Per-View present a big night of boxing brought to you by Bloodshot, starring Vin Diesel in theaters March 13th, along with proper number 12 Irish whiskey, the finest, the tastiest, the smoothest liquid gold in the world. Introducing our three judges scoring this bout from ringside, we have Max DeLuca, Glenn Feldman, and Steve Weisfeld. All right, fans, here we go. 10 rounds of boxing in a battle of super welterweights in the ring. Introducing to you first on my right, fighting out of the red corner, wearing black shorts with white trim, joining us from Sydney, Australia. He weighed in at 153 pounds, a 2016 Olympian. He is undefeated at 6 wins, no losses, 4 wins coming by way of knockout. Introducing the undefeated Daniel Drops Bombs Lewis. His opponent across the ring is fighting out of the blue corner, wearing gold trunks, fighting out of Coachella, California, by way of West Palm Beach, Florida. He weighed in at 153½ pounds. He also is undefeated at 13 wins, no losses, 1 draw with 9 wins coming by way of knockout. Please welcome the 6'5", towering Inferno, Sebastian Fundora. And a referee in charge now to give instructions, Robert Bird.
Okay, gentlemen, I gave you instructions in the dressing room. I remind you now, when I tell you stop, what that means is stop whatever you're doing and give me a clean break. Protect yourself at all times and obey my commands at all times. Now, anything on the band and above is good. If it's on the band and above, it'll be good. Anything else is low. Gentlemen, let's do this.
How often do you see a fighter who would have to punch up to hit the waistband of an opponent?
Let me tell you, I've seen Fundora box before, and he's a surprise. You know, a guy this tall, I think he was 6'5" the other day, now he's 6'6".
Still growing.
So he's still growing, and you would expect him to be one of these boxers that to go out there and throws a jab and move around, but he's not. He likes to slug it out. He'll do well in the phone booth.
80-inch reach. We checked him in at 6'6", and yet that is his fighting style. Look at this height advantage here to get the night going. The undefeated Fundora against Daniel Lewis, the Olympian from Australia.
I just want to know where Daniel Lewis found sparring for his opponent. Like,
unless he dialed up the Australian national basketball team, I don't think it's happening. It's like watching a praying mantis against a tortoise here.
And you know what? He's got the right idea. He doesn't want to stay outside. He wants to get in and do some damage, and this is what he's doing.
It was a right hand, and coming back with an uppercut was Fundora. Looking out that southpaw jab. Lewis trying to get himself to the inside. Fundora was born in West Palm Beach, Florida, then moved to Southern California when he was 15 years old, but he began boxing at 8 years old and had 130 amateur fights. His father's a full-time boxing coach. His sister, Gabriella, she boxes too. She was ranked #1 in the nation. Won a JO, Junior Olympics, a couple times. And an older brother, Alberto, who's a pro with 12 fights.
How tall are the other siblings?
I do not have that.
That's what I'd like to know.
You have stumped me.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know.
We'll put our research team on that. All the collective resources of Fox and ESPN. We'll try to get you an answer on that. Track that down.
Like, is Fundora an anomaly in the family, or is this a family thing?
Let him go, Lewis.
First bout of the night here on our heavyweight championship night. Have a very good-looking title fight coming your way with the always fun to see Emmanuel Navarrete, the WBO junior featherweight champions, coming up next. against the Filipino, Gio Santissima. Then we have our heavyweight title eliminator with Charles Martin, former belt holder, against Gerald Washington. And we will constantly keep you up to date on the arrival of Wilder Fury, what's going on in the locker room, and we will check in on the 2 unbeaten heavyweight champions all night long.
If I'm Daniel Lewis, I'm selling out. And when I say selling out, I'm willing to get hit to get my way in and work that long frame of Fundora. You cannot stay on the outside because you're going to get peppered all night long.
And you know, with Fundora, yeah, I mean, he's always up against short opponents, so he's used to fighting short guys all the time.
Lewis came in at 5'10", 153.
Got a bell, guys. Bell!
End of 1, our opening fight here on the Wilder Fury 2 pay-per-view. And there is the TV and production compound just outside here. And that is the Gypsy King. Always interesting to see what Tyson Fury wears when he walks in. You see the rain here in Vegas tonight. And there is Fury, and already getting a reception as they show him on the jumbo. He has a custom tailor in London who makes numerous suits for him for his fight weeks. And this suit you see here celebrates his championship win against Vladimir Klitschko. All the images of November 2015 when he defeated the long-running heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko to claim numerous belts as well as the lineal championship, which he is looking to defend for the 6th time. Flanked by his brother just behind him, his wife Paris, and you see the conversation quickly with Sugar Hill Stewart, his new trainer. Sugar Hill Stewart, who comes from the famed Kronk Gym in Detroit, the nephew of the late, great Emmanuel Stewart, who, of course, Lennox, you spent many years with.
Yes, and, you know, the Kronk style, the Kronk theory, the Kronk secrets, he has everything. He knows everything. He's got a wealth of information, and, you know, he's bringing the Kronk memories alive, especially Emmanuel Stewart's memories alive.
Round 2 here between the tall Fundora at 6'6" and the upset-seeking Lewis from Australia, Daniel Lewis. If I had to ask each of you, and you have the first-hand knowledge, and you are a boxing aficionado and former all-time great, if I had to ask each of you to define what the Kronk style means that Tyson Fury is now being trained with, how do you define the Kronk style, Lennox?
Well, there's too many words to describe it. Too many words, too many champions, too many different styles. But the main style is always to be first.
Yeah, from what I've seen from the many greats that Emmanuel has trained, is just Emmanuel was about business. Like, he didn't want you messing around. He often had guys with height, and he wanted you to use it. He wanted you to fight like a big man. I think that was one of his greatest gifts to his fighters, was teaching them how to use their attributes. Good jab, right hands, left hooks. But when you have a guy hurt, you know, Lewis, he would say, man, get him out of there. We're trying to go home. That was always what Emmanuel Stewart said.
Yeah, I mean, when I first went to him, he wasn't trying to change my style. He was really just trying to dial me in, you know, use the style that I have naturally and make it better.
I remember when you fought Mike Tyson and Emmanuel felt like you weren't doing enough, and you had a moment in the corner where he yelled at you and said, man, get this man out of here. He's ready to go. And you did it after a couple rounds.
Oh, yeah.
Good right hand from Lewis moments ago, and you can see blood coming from the nose of the 13-0-1 Sebastian Fundora. Look to place the uppercut, but look at the face of tall Fundora right now. And as he is bloodied and being pushed back by Lewis, who places another uppercut as at 6'6", his opponent's leaning forward.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Fundora, if you look at some of the things that he does right and some of the things he does wrong, this is one of the things he does wrong, is leaning over, especially against a shorter opponent. He really bringing himself, which is a tall man, down to the shorter man Lewis's size, and it makes him easier to get hit.
And Lewis, like we talked about earlier, he's selling out. He's taking 2 shots to get his 2 or 3 shots off. That's why he's having success.
So glad you're with us on this pay-per-view. Collaborative effort between ESPN and Fox, and that means the great gift of having the co-hosts, Brian Kenny and Max Kellerman. BK.
Joe Tess, thank you so much. It's so weird watching this, by the way. Max, this is what it would have looked like if Wilt had taken that fight with Ali. I just shoot him down. Remember that shot, the classic shot?
He was going to take the fight, and at the press conference, after he's pumping himself up, Ali came in and said one thing: timber. Wilt Blanche, fight off.
He brought up a good point there about guys fighting with their identities. Do you think tonight Wilder and Fury are fighting to the best of their identities, or are they trying to branch out, Tim?
I don't know. We haven't seen the fight yet. You know, I have to tell you, fighters, we lie. I don't know what Fury's going to do.
They say something's going to be different.
We can say that about Fury. Deontay Wilder will fight with his identity, using the jab, setting up the right hand.
Great punchers throughout history in the heavyweight division, divided into two groups. The great fighters who could also just devastate you, Foreman and Tyson, and guys like Shavers and Tua, who are good but not great, but can hit like that. The question with Deontay is, which group does he belong? Yeah. He knocks out Tyson Fury, it's the first one.
Let's get back to Joe Tess.
Thanks, guys. What a great team up there to have Tim Bradley and Sean Porter, and then the longtime friends and all-time boxing experts of Max and Brian with our studio coverage tonight of this historic venture. Everybody coming together to put forth Wilder Fury 2. So glad you've joined us here on pay-per-view coverage from Vegas. Round number 3 of Fundora and Lewis. Fundora has outlanded Lewis 48 connects to 24. Did absorb a right-handed Fundora in that last round. You saw the blood from his nose. Was trying to target that body there. Our ace reporter ringside all night long will be Bernardo Osuna. Bernardo.
Joe, I've got something from trainer Graham Shaw. He says, look, Lewis just can't walk right in. He's got to use his jab, use more head movement, and keep working the body. But we got to remember, Terrence Crawford was in camp with Lewis, or Lewis was in camp with Terrence Crawford. I said, Terrence, what does he do well? He said, he's tough as hell, and he's got a great will to win.
Yeah, that was a breakthrough moment for Lewis, that he impressed some of the bosses enough when he fought on the Miguel Perchelt undercard that he was invited to training camp with Terrence Crawford. He was able to get in 25 rounds with Bud Crawford. He says it's just, you know what's interesting? It wasn't necessarily about what happened in the ring with Bud Crawford that his biggest takeaway was. It was simply watching the professionalism, saying how he goes about training, how he conducts himself, of acting like the ultimate pro. That was his big takeaway.
Well, you know, anytime a guy comes into your training camp, they've got to learn something, because there's a reason why they're there, and they've got to take away something from the training camp like that.
Yeah, and if they're smart, they'll learn more from just being in the ring with you. They're going to learn from your mannerisms, how you treat people, how you carry yourself, your professionalism, like Joe just said. So good for Daniel Lewis. Even though Fundora is 6'6", certainly not fighting like a man that's 6'6". He's sacrificing his height.
And he's throwing the right punches. You got to throw an uppercut against Daniel Lewis, because that's where his head is. His head is coming in and is keeping it in one place. And he needs to move it from side to side instead of keeping it in that one place, ready for that uppercut by Fundora.
See the jabs there. And Lewis able to land 11 jabs to Fundora's 5. 5 jabs landed as a 6'6" junior middleweight. And now the blood on the face of Daniel Lewis. Those are moments of round number 3. We will have the WBO Junior Featherweight World Title fight coming up next. Emmanuel Navarrete in action. Great Mexican fighter, 30 wins deep into his career with a belt. Wilder Fury 2 is brought to you by Proper Number 12 Irish Whiskey, the finest, the tastiest, the smoothest liquid gold in the world. And by Manscaped. Experience maximum performance manscaping tools at manscaped.com. And there is Tyson Fury, now settled into his locker room, sitting back and relaxing. He always likes to have a lot of fun when the camera's on. We saw this yesterday with the weigh-in when he was joking around with Deontay Wilder as well. But he says that he is in the happiest place he could be. He knows that he put the work in, feels good about the weight, the conditioning, the new trainer, the nutritionist program. He ate 6 meals a day. And Lennox, he had a really bad habit in prior training camps of drinking a lot of soda, a lot of diet soda. No longer. For months now, we've been watching him everywhere he goes with a big jug of water.
That's good. I mean, water is great. He needs it, especially when you're fighting out here in Nevada. It gets dry, and he's not used to the conditions. So this is part of the conditions that you have to make sure that you're used to and that your team knows about and that you're prepared for. When you don't have enough water in your system, that's when the cuts open up a little bit easier.
Yeah, I talked about Daniel Lewis selling out to get to the body of Fundora early on, and he's been doing that. He's taking some punishment. He's taking some shots. Both of his eyes are kind of swollen, but he's willing to go through that to get what he needs to get, which is those kind of body shots right there. And Fundora just hasn't been taught to use his frame. He just hasn't been taught to keep that long jab out there. There's no way that a guy 5'9" should be in your chest and in your body at all. You should have strong arms and a strong jab and long enough punches where that guy can't even get close to you.
Well, Fundora is trained by his father, Fred.
You know, I spoke to his father, and his father said, yes, they want to work more on distance, want to work more on Fundora to throw more jabs to keep the guy out.
And sometimes it may not just be the style of a coach. You know, every coach can't look at a person's anatomy and coach them accordingly. Sometimes they have a specific style, whether you're 5'9" or 6'6", and they're going to teach you the same. And that may be the case here with Fundora.
See, coming off that draw, his last fight, the only blemish so far in this early stage of his career.
It's like no jab right there. That's when he should be jabbing, keeping the smaller Lewis at bay and on the outside.
Fill that space. Tried to catch him coming in that time, and now Lewis on the inside. We'll see if he gets to work there. A little bit of separation. Fundora trying to fill it with a left hand.
Fundora has some nice short shots inside. He's not a bad mid-range inside fighter, but he has his chin in the air and he gets hit on the way out the door. Like that.
But Lewis is keeping up the pressure. You know, he knows what he needs to do. He needs to stay very close to Fundora.
26-year-old from Sydney, Australia. Comes from a family of fighters as well. His father fought amateurs, had a brother who fought 60 fights, had a sister as well who was an amateur fighter. He started 10 years old and fought 150 amateur fights, including that ride to the Olympics. Now, what was interesting with Lewis is the post-Olympic lull he had, because he didn't fight for a couple of years. He ended up working construction with his father, and he gained 60 pounds.
60 pounds is a lot of weight to gain. I wonder where he put it.
Thankfully, he got rid of it.
Back it. Going good. Start to find it now. Start to find it. You're backing him up. Keep your head moving. Really important. Yeah, relax a little bit more like that. Yeah, you did. You're taking the shots cleaner. You're finding him now. He's finding him up too. Nice relaxed movement. Keep the shots in. Couple like that. Right? Telegraphing a little bit too much. You're throwing that down. He's going to have to want to fight you. But you're too rangy. Use it. Use it. Right. When you're Mark's behavior, and then bam, hit him with that jab.
Well, there are two very big Tyson Fury supporters, Stephanie McMahon and her husband, Triple H, Paul Levesque. Of course, Fury had that great run in WWE. And here is the arrival of Deontay Wilder as he has made his way down from his suite through the casino at the MGM Grand, wrapping around right through the restaurant row there, and he will take a left-hand turn. But look at the crowd and the security trying to weave their way through to get Deontay Wilder here. Everybody's got their cell phones out trying to capture history. The WBC heavyweight champion, the bronze bomber from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Deontay Wilder's walking through the MGM Grand, kind of looking like Clubber Lang.
Meanwhile, round number 5 here, scheduled for 10 with Fundora. But you see the focus on the face of Wilder. He's had his family with him this week, his fiance Telly Swift, his dear friends, and his longtime trainer JD. They go all the way back from when Deontay was a young man. He was struggling to make ends meet. He was working multiple jobs. He was a beer delivery guy. He was working out at times, carrying kegs and running down the street with kegs. And he went into JD's gym there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He said, hey, maybe I could make a little money and be a journeyman fighter. Journeyman fighter? How about all the way to 42-0-1 and the best puncher in the world?
Hard to describe a few days before and the day before and then the day of a fight for a fighter. You're going through so many different emotions. Sometimes you want to laugh and enjoy, you know, a movie or your family, and then other times you look like Deontay's looking right now. The moment is weighing on you, and you feel what it feels like to be walking to that arena, and you know within a few hours you're going to be in that ring in front of the whole world, risking your life, risking your reputation and everything else to try to win and to get yourself in a better position.
Yeah, he's feeling good. He's focused. He looks like he's thinking about the fight, and he can't wait to get in there. I mean, he's been doing a whole week of press, and there's got to be a time where he says stop, and this is the time.
Well, the moment is here.
Yes.
They're taking him through the, now they're taking him through the kitchen to avoid the crowd here. He's actually going through the banquet area behind the MGM Grand Garden Arena. So all of a sudden, he's gone full-on Henry Hill, Goodfellas style, to get to the heavyweight world title fight, as he will then wrap around the perimeter of the arena. But this, here he is, going by the coffee service table of the back kitchen of the Grand Garden Arena as the heavyweight champion of the world.
If you know the MGM, you know those back channels to get to the MGM Grand Arena without all the trouble from the fans.
And of course, you have 17,000 who are filling in the Grand Garden Arena, so it's not like you can exactly walk Deontay Wilder through the main entrance. So this is how they go about it, as the hotel security leads the way, as well as the entourage for Deontay Wilder, the 11th defense of his WBC title, and so much history on the line. He currently is tied with his idol, Muhammad Ali, for the second longest streak of consecutive WBC heavyweight title defenses at 10. So you win tonight, you become the lineal champion of the world. You become the Ring Magazine champion of the world, and you break the tie with Muhammad Ali with your 11th consecutive defense of the famed green belt, the WBC belt. And now he's going past the production unit, the electrical compound, as they will wrap around and get him to his locker room. Seen the wide spectrum of emotions with Wilder all week. When you sit with him in a production meeting like you guys did the other day, he can be a fascinating listen, joyful, fun, emotional, and yet he can also lock into this point and become deadly serious and hyper-aware and attentive.
The great ones have a switch, and they know when to turn it on and when to turn it off.
Plus, he likes to talk as well, and everything he speaks about, is something we can relate to. I asked him how did he feel being in Italy and meeting the Pope, and he said it was a great time, and he was watching the Pope, and he learned some stuff from the Pope as well. So
he had a wonderful visit in Rome. I was able to visit with Telly and Deontay in January, and a few weeks removed from the return from Rome. And he was brought over there by the WBC because they were presenting Deontay Wilder as a sportsman who can bring about peace. And if you talk to Deontay, he loves to celebrate people, and he loves the goodness of people. And he was brought over there, and he was touched greatly by the visit with Pope Francis And he came back, and in so many of the interviews, the longer form interviews he has done since that visit, he will bring that up, of how it was a life-altering experience to go to Rome, to go to the Vatican, and to be able to spend time with Pope Francis. We are in round number 6 here of Fundora against Lewis. We have marveled at the size of Fundora and yet the range that this fight has been fought at. CompuTrack, which is another tracking service of CompuBox who tallies the punches, they have it at 51% of this fight being fought at close range. Right now, Larry Hazard's senior scorecard has Fundora, the taller fighter, up 49-46. As you see, the WBC champion has made his way down now to the floor level of the Grand Garden Arena, and he will soon take that turnaround and he will enter his locker room where he will settle in and get ready to be taped up. They will have the referees visit, the final instructions, and then what we have heard is an outrageous but very important ring walk to Deontay Wilder in terms of who he wants to celebrate tonight and the message that he wants to deliver.
Very similar fight, still in the ring. Daniel Lewis trying to press forward. He's having moments. Fundora's having moments, but still wondering why Fundora is fighting this kind of fight. He's got an 80-inch reach. His opponent has a 71.5-inch reach. Why are you getting hit with those kind of shots? This just shouldn't be happening. He's got to make these adjustments, and even if it's not tonight, he's got to go back to the drawing board after this, and his father's got to cause him to learn how to use the reach and the gifts that he has.
Dre, at 6'6", Lennox at 6'6", he's landed 7 total jabs.
It's unacceptable.
Well, you know, his father did say he wants him to get a little more rangy and put Daniel Lewis at a distance a little bit more and throw that jab a little bit more. But, you know, he's trying it, but it's not doing it as much as he should be.
End of 6. That gives us a chance to visit with Kate Abdo and Mark Kriegel.
Thank you very much, guys. Looking ahead now to the main event between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Seems like we could be in for a very different matchup this time around. What stands out to you about the fight this time, Mark?
It makes me think of what this division has been missing. It's not talent, it's rivalry. Dempsey Tunney, Ali Frazier, now Wilder Fury. You want to be immortal, great. Just understand that you don't get there alone. This division is about rematches.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fascinating, this one. They say that when the heavyweight division is doing well, then boxing as a whole is doing well. Joe, let's send it back to you ringside.
We have experienced that firsthand as now Deontay has arrived at his locker room. But to Kate's point, there's boxing, then there's heavyweight boxing, and it's just different. And we have experienced that firsthand in just watching how this promotion has roared up and the fire has been fueled with national and global interest as the week has gone on. You go back to the glory days of the 70s with Ali and Frazier and Foreman. You go to the era, Lennox, that you were superb in with Holyfield and Bo and Tyson and yourself, a 2-time lineal champion. But then the years of the Klitschkos, 2 brothers who, of course, are not going to face each other, 2 brothers who mostly fought in Eastern Europe, and the American fan wasn't there. Instead, the attention was paid to Floyd Mayweather, to Manny Pacquiao, and we had a golden era of lower weight classes. But how different it is when it's the 2 big men with these personalities, with these glossy records on this kind of a stage.
It's big. It's massive. Undefeated boxers, heavyweights, different styles, different personalities. You're right. Gonna be a great fight.
We expect it to be. The first one was as well when they had that controversial draw on December 1st of 2018 in which Wilder, according to most ringside observers, they favored the ring generalship, the elusiveness, and the boxing style of Fury, but Wilder came up with the knockdown in the 9th and then the spectacular combination, crushing blows to floor Fury in the 12th, only to see Fury rise up as they took it to the bell, and thus why we have this here tonight.
Well, Kriegel all week has been talking about rivalry, especially in the heavyweight division. And it's one thing to have a rival, but it's another thing to have that rival and be willing to toe the line and face that rival. And that's what Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury have displayed. That's why we're getting this rematch tonight. They have the same spirit in them as the man sitting next to me, and the Holyfields and the Alis and all the guys who laid the bricks on the path that these guys are now walking on. You can have a rival, but you got to be willing to face that rival.
And you're right. Every era, there's always a rival. You know, the two guys in my era, Holyfield and Tyson, were my rivals. You know, Riddick Bowe wouldn't face me, so he couldn't be. He was my rival, but he didn't face me. He didn't want to fight me.
No, let him up. There you go.
And too often in this day and age, we see good fighters on either side, same weight class, but they're not fighting for one reason or another.
That's the beauty of tonight. Guys willing to get right back in there and fight. Guys willing to take on challenges.
Both guys, you know, went overseas to challenge each other. So, you know, that's remarkable and, you know, the right thing to do.
And look at the result. Look at how it's embraced and the reaction from not just the boxing fan, but at this point, the mainstream public.
When I won the World Junior Championships in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, in 1983.
For that organizational champion against the lineal champion. You think about that, you think of Ali Frazier, Tyson Spinks. That is the case tonight. Wilder Fury, the lineal heavyweight champion Fury, the man who beat the man, the sometimes paused but unbroken and recognized chain going back in history to the 1800s. Wilder, of course, won his belt in the ring against Brazil in 2015. It was that same year that Fury claimed that lineal crown as well as belts against Klitschko. Round 8 here. Fundora with a connect advantage of 131 to 111 in this fight. Larry Hazard Sr. scores it 68 to 65 for Fundora. Looking forward to seeing our title bout up next at 122 pounds between the extremely active. This guy fights all the time. He turns around to Emmanuel Navarrete and says, where's the next fight? He's going to have another title defense coming up next against Gio Santissima. Santissima comes from the Philippines. Navarrete, the pride of Mexico City, with a 30-1 record with 26 knockouts.
You know, Fundora, you know, he's not throwing that right jab with no power. He's really just putting it out there. He's really concerned about his right hook and left hook. But I think he should throw that right jab with a lot more power to keep Daniel Lewis off of him. Daniel Lewis is saying that, you know, there's nothing you're throwing to keep me off of you. So I'm just coming in there and throwing my punches.
Like that.
Yep.
I mean, nothing, you know, a little jousting. Just putting it out there, but not with purpose. Every time I look at the CompuBox numbers, I shake my head. I see Fundora here now at this point. That southpaw jab, only 11 landed.
Not good, Joe.
There's a left hand that comes behind it, but he's just looking at it as a rangefinder for the moment.
That's why I mentioned the way Fundora must be trained, because you can see it on display right now. If his father trained him to be a tall man and to fight like a tall man, you would see that. You see that right jab out there. Sometimes he'd keep it out there and just kind of paw with it. Sometimes he'd stick a hard one. Sometimes he'd probably have to get warned because he's trying to hold it out there to keep the smaller fighter at bay. But you would get the sense that he's trying to keep his distance and keep his range so he can get those big shots through the way he needs to. And you just don't see that. He sacrificed his height this whole fight, and he's fighting like a small man.
Dre, by the way, you asked earlier about his brother who fights. Is he also tall? Crackstaff came up with 6'3" for Alberto, and he is a super middleweight at 6'3".
Good size for a super middleweight. Here's another moment where we're seeing Fundora sacrifice his height. He raised up into a big shot right there from Lewis. Lewis is a smaller man, so of course he's going to be punching up. Advantage Lewis, if the taller man's back is to the ropes, he previously had bent down and he raised up into that shot. All Lewis had to do was throw it and turn it over, and Fundora's chin was right there.
I know, and Fundora kind of committed himself. He's so big and rangy. Anytime you see him making a move, you can see it ahead of time. The shorter guy has the advantage when it comes to that.
Dry up, Red. Dry up. Thank you.
Start round number 9. First of our 3 fights prior to the heavyweight championship fight between Wilder and Fury. A pro for 11 months is Daniel Lewis. They just debuted in March of 2019. This is already his 3rd fight scheduled for 10 rounds. He's gone the full 10 rounds once before. Here he is in round number 9. 5 fights in Australia. This is 2nd fight in the U.S. Probably comes over, looks across the ring and says, wow, you've grown big here, don't you?
And if you're unusually big for a weight class, you got to build your body up. You just don't want to be a long, rangy guy with no physical strength. I'm not saying try to make your fighter a bodybuilder. I'm not an advocate for that, but build his legs up. Get his foundation strong. Get him to a point where he can be a rangy guy who's physically strong. That's really, really hard to deal with.
Now, Dre, when you see a tall, skinny guy in there and you're facing him, what are you thinking?
My first thought is to break him down. I know that I'm going to have to get through range. That's the first thing. Once I get through that, I'm going to work your body. I'm going to hit you with short shots, uppercuts, left hooks. And I'm going to keep pressing you until I start to see you wilt.
And, you know, what I think usually is like when a tall, rangy guy like that with skinny legs, that means he has no chin. All you have to do is hit him on the chin, and he has no legs to hold him up.
Well, you were firing down at David, too, and Mike Tyson.
Those guys were hard to knock out because they had tree trunk legs.
Did they ever?
Yeah, especially Tua.
He was just a human square.
Oh, my goodness.
He was a block.
You fight him, you know it's going to be a long night, and if you're not careful, it could be a short night.
So it was 5'10". Checked in at 240 for that fight against Lennox. See the blood coming from the nose of Fundora. There's a right hand to the body. A tall southpaw. And he chicken wing flicks that jab out.
Fundora's got a nice left. He throws it straight. He throws it over the top, and he's got a beautiful half kind of hook, half left uppercut that he throws. That's a natural shot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of leverage behind it, especially, you know, the fact that he's so rangy and lanky. You know, all he has to do is throw it with some speed and some accuracy, and the power is there.
But the bloody nose, the extra punishment or the excess punishment, if I'm the father of Fundora, that's not okay, that's not acceptable, and I'm going to let my son know that, because when that kind of stuff is accepted, especially early in a career, it's only going to get worse.
End of 9. CompuBox has Fundora ahead 162 to 140 on total connects, and they will tend to that bloody nose.
He's coming like a bull. That's what he wants to do. He's trying to cover you so you can trip. All right? Just pop like that. Pop. 5, 3. Thank you. Last round. Touch up. Center ring. Last round, okay? Good, guys. Last round. Touch up center ring. That's in the center ring. Okay? Seconds out. Seconds out. Touch him up.
10th and final round. Larry Hazard Sr. has Fundora up 88-83, having checked off the last 3 rounds, according to our scorer ringside.
I have it a little closer, Joe. I have it 86-85. Fundora going into this last round.
Interesting to look at the CompuTrack. We told you about the range of the fight. Right now, they're at 57% of the time this fight being fought on the inside at close range. So that has gone up as the fight has gone on.
If I'm the father of Fundora, we get through this fight, I'm banning him from working on the inside for at least 2 or 3 months. You're going to learn how to use your height and your reach one way or the other, son.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, there's no reason why he shouldn't be using his attributes, and he's got that big, long.
Just those torso and those.
Yeah,
those
I mean, he's got to use it. He's got to use it.
But even inside, you can see his legs. They're not sturdy. They're not stable. He's falling over his feet. That means he's got to get his body physically strong. Then you teach him how to work his range and how to work, you know, just use all his God-given ability. And hey, if you can't do it as a coach, bring somebody else in, not to take over, but to help. You owe it to your son to do that.
Well, he's doing it this last round for some reason. He should have been doing it a little bit earlier, but he needs to do it this last round because he knows Daniel Lewis has to pick up the pace and try and knock him out.
He only does it when Lewis allows him to do it. As soon as, good shot right there, but as soon as Lewis wants to press the issue, all of a sudden he sacrifices his reach.
Time that left hand did Fundora moments ago. Ahead on our unofficial scorers card, Larry Hazard Sr. CompuBox has him plus 28 on the connect advantage as well.
Fundora did something really wise there. As he threw a jab and he was inside, he moved his head from one side to the other, which is right because he's a tall man, easy target, and he doesn't want to get hit easy.
See the jab rate for Fundora. He's struggled to have consistency there, not landing over 3 jabs in any round tonight. Only 13 connects with the jab in total as we come to the final seconds here of our first fight of this pay-per-view from Vegas. World title fight is coming up next at 122 pounds. Then we have the IBF heavyweight title eliminator, and then it's the big one of the most anticipated fights in the sport in a long, long time. The undefeated heavyweight champions meeting up in a historic rematch, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Some blood from the mouth of the Australian Olympian, the 26-year-old Daniel Lewis. And there is the 3-year pro, having gone through the 10-round test. Sebastian Fundora from Coachella, California. From the fighting family, including his brother, who's a pro with 12 fights, his sister, who has won Junior Olympics a couple times. And here is Fundora, who is looking to move his mark to 14-0-1. Crowd already starting to gather in now in the floor seats. 2 fights to go before our heavyweight championship. Tyson Fury has put it out there for a month and a half, saying, I'm going to knock out Deontay Wilder in the 2nd round. Wilder time and again has said, even you don't believe that, Tyson. And there is the bronze bomber, Deontay Wilder, just starting to walk around and get loose. And flanked by his wife, Paris, always having fun is Tyson Fury. You know, we were with Tyson the other day. He said, what do you think it's going to be like? You haven't been with Sugar Hill Stewart, your new trainer. He says, we're going to have a blast. We're going to be sitting in that locker room laughing and just having so much fun. Let's make this one official, and for that, here's Jimmy Lennon Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 10 rounds of action, we have a unanimous decision. Here are the score totals. Judge at ringside, Steve Weisfeld scores the bout 97-93. Max DeLuca sees it 98-92. And Glenn Feldman scores the bout 99-91. All three in favor of the winner. And still undefeated, the towering Inferno, Sebastian Fundora.
Sebastian Fundora goes to 14-0-1. By the way, two of the judges who you just heard with their scores there will be two of the judges for the heavyweight championship of the world, both Feldman and Weisfeld, coming up later tonight. Let's go up to Bernardo.
All right, Sebastian, you come away with the win. Did you make it harder than it had to be by fighting inside?
You know what? I was ready for this type of fight. Something we're used to. I don't want to make no excuses at all. But I had a flu this whole week. I was coughing. That's why my nose bled easy. But it was a great fight. He brought it too. I knew he was going to bring a fight. The Olympian, a great Australian fighter. And I hope the crowd got what they wanted.
I know your father wanted you on the inside, but he also wanted you to use the jab more. What do you need to improve upon to make it to a world-class level?
Just keep working on it. We worked a lot distance for this fight. It's just, I guess, we need to work at a more extreme pace where someone wants to rush you like completely. Like I felt almost he jumped in with his punches. So maybe we need to work with someone like that. Maybe find smaller people that can spar us so we have much of a real visual of the fight.